Good day, everyone. We are the Group 4, and we are going to discuss culturally sensitive and bias free language, gender bias, and sexist language. But before anything else, allow me to introduce myself first. I am Karen Odinsing, and I am with my co presenters, Miss Ashnea Meldred Dumo, Mr. Reggie Flores, and Miss Hazel May Dictahan. Please bear with us and I hope nga naman masabdan sa amuang presentation. So, the objectives or the intended learning outcome for this topic is first, use words that are free from gender prejudice. So, prejudice means the unfair judgment. And then the second, identify the ways on how to avoid gender-biased language. So first, let us define unsa di ay ang cultural sensitivity and bias-free language. So, cultural sensitivity is awareness of cultural differences and similarities between people without assigning a value, positive or negative, better or worse, right or wrong. It simply means that you are aware that people are not all the same and that you recognize that your culture is no better than any other culture. And then next, the bias-free language. Terms that treat people with respect. Leaving out certain words such as not describing someone's physical characteristics when doing so serves no purpose. This will be elaborated along the discussion. For now, here is Ms. Ashnea Mildred Dumo to discuss cultural sensitivity.
Being aware that cultural differences and similarities between people exist have an effect on values, learning, and behavior. This means nga kabalo ka that people are not the same labi na sa culture. A set of skills that allows you to understand and learn about people whose cultural background is not the same as your own. This happens, for example, ni-travel ka, niadto ka sa lain lugar and then naa kay gibuhat or naa kay actions nga para sa imuha is okay lang. Pero basin offending na dayto sa ilahang nga part. So, you really need to understand and learn their culture. Just as important as awareness of the existence of the word Englishes is that practicing cultural sensitivity. So, it's really vital to practice cultural sensitivity. It's a basic practice. Be aware that cultural differences and similarities between people, and this should not be assigned a positive or negative value via words and description in selected writing. So, you just need to be sensitive in the culture of the people. Also, through writing, dili magpataka.
Now let us discuss the stages of cultural sensitivity. Milton Binet developed a solid framework to understand the various stages of cultural sensitivity, or he calls it intercultural sensitivity, that a person may experience. So the first stage is denial. At this stage of cultural sensitivity, people not recognize cultural differences and experiences. They believe their culture is the only real one and they tend to interact in homogeneous groups and stereotype everyone else. So, sa denial stage rather, the people believe nga ilahalang culture ang maoy real and they interact only sa ilahang same kind or same culture. So, for example, people who say, we are all the same and I don't understand why we have to learn about the different groups in the company. Why don't they just learn how we do things in America? So, gusto nila nga ilahang own culture ang i-follow. Dapat katong other groups mo adapt sa ilahang culture. Moonay sa denial stage. And then the second stage, defense. At the defense stage of cultural sensitivity, people recognize some differences but see them as negative because they assume their culture is the most evolved, the best one. So, at this stage, naka-recognize na sila nga na ay differences among culture pero their own culture gihapon nila hang gina-follow or gina-practice. Kaya for them, their culture is the best one. So for example, people who say in Latin America, you can't just get to the point and talk business. They want to tell you their life story. I don't understand why they can't just learn to be more direct and save everyone time. So, sa given example, nakarecognize na siya sa lain culture but then they see them as negative gihapon. So, for the third stage, the minimization. Individuals at this stage of cultural sensitivity are unaware that they are projecting their own cultural values. They see their own values as superior. They think that the mere awareness of cultural differences is enough. These people think we are all the same because we are more similar than different, and in the end, we all have similar physical, biological, psychological needs, and etc. They think they are wonderful because they see people as people, but they are actually denying the influence of culture in every person's experience. So, for example, statements such as, in the end, we all want to be like, or we are all people. So, at this stage, they think we are all the same. They say people as people and actually denying the influence of other culture. And for the next stage is the stage of acceptance. At this stage of cultural sensitivity, people are able to shift perspectives to understand that the same ordinary behavior can have different meanings in different cultures. They may not agree or even like the differences they observe, but they are interested in finding out and learning about another culture. They are able to identify how experiences are influenced by one's cultures. So at this stage, they tend to recognize the different meanings in different cultures. They are willing to find out and learn more about the other cultures. So for example, people who approach others with genuine interest and curiosity about how they experience the same situations. They ask questions such as, how do Dominicans do it? Or, what would your family do in a situation like this? So they are interested in learning other cultures. Moni sa acceptance nga stage. For the fifth stage is the stage of adaptation. Individuals who are at this stage of cultural sensitivity become more competent in their ability to communicate with other cultures. They can evaluate other people's behavior from this people's frame of reference and can adapt behavior to fit the norms of a different culture. So, for example, people who seamlessly interact with others from different cultures by following the norms of that culture. They feel that they can respect their own values while adapting to the values of other cultures they interact with. They use empathy effectively. For example, people who bow at the right time when interacting with Japanese clients or naturally expect certain guests from certain ethnic backgrounds to show up 45 minutes after the scheduled start time of a party. So, sa adaptation nga stage, they respect their own values but at the same time, they adapt to other cultures. The last stage is the stage of integration. People who are at this stage of cultural sensitivity are able to shift easily from one cultural frame of reference to another. They develop empathy for other cultures. Empathy is putting yourself into others' shoes. So, for example, people who are equally comfortable with one culture or another. This stage is easy to see with perfectly bilingual or bicultural individuals who almost change their personality when they interact with one group, their family, for instance, or another, their Anglo co-workers, for instance. But they are equally genuine in both situations. So, for my own insights in this stage, katong mga K-drama or K-pop fans, for example, we tend to learn their language, their cultures, kanang ilahang mga pagkaon. So, we use chopsticks rather, or samgipsal. So, mga ingani, we are able to shift easily from one culture to another. While learning Korean cultures, we are also valuing our own culture.
What is cultural sensitivity in the context of a dominant culture? In life and work environments, we frequently face situations where there is a dominant and secondary culture. For example, in the US, the European American is the dominant culture, whereas Hispanic, African American, and Chinese cultures are all secondary. When we say dominant, it means the most common or mas daghan. Culture sensitivity implies that both groups understand and respect each other's characteristics. This is always a challenge. Kay if ever nga sa field kung asa ka nag-work, kay mas dominant ang lain culture, so you just need to adapt to their culture.
So, for now, let us discuss the bias-free language. Terms that treat people with respect, leaving out certain words, such as not describing someone's physical characteristics, when doing so serves no purpose. Sometimes manggod the language that we use kay abi nato nga pariharatanan. So it's not fair to stereotype. While gaistorya ta, our facial expressions or gestures may convince our listeners that we are not being offensive. So, to avoid confusion, we need to use terms that respect people. Bias-free language is a language that is sensitive to people's sex, race, age, physical condition, and many other categories. It does not discriminate and therefore includes all readers in a fair and friendly manner. So take note, it does not discriminate. Ang bias-free language does not discriminate. So, ang biased language refers to words and phrases that are considered prejudice, offensive, and hurtful. So, kining biased language, katuning mga unfair nga judgment nga, mga words that have unfair judgments and offensive kung makasakit pud sa uban ta. So, biased language includes expressions that demean or exclude people because of their age, their sex, race, ethnicity, social class, physical or mental traits. So, muna siya mga biased language.
How can we achieve a bias-free language? Number 1. Be aware of words, image, and situations that suggest that all or most members of a group are the same. 2. Avoid qualifiers that reinforce stereotypes. 3. Identify people by identify characteristics only when relevant. 4. Be aware of language that some people has questionable racial or ethics connotation. What are the ways to avoid biased language? 1. Use third-person point of view. 2. Choosing words carefully when making comparison. 3. Be specific when writing about people. 4. Use people-first language. 5. Use gender-neutral phrases. 6. Use inclusive or preferred personal pronoun. 7. Check for gender assumption.
So, why is bias-free language so important? So, gender bias or sexist language. Use words that are free from gender prejudice and unfair assumptions. Words must not influence the audience in any particular or unfair conditions. So, according to Lacker, kanang bias-free language is language that is sensitive to people's sex, race, age, and physical condition, and many other kanang categories. So, for me, kanang yes, it is so sensitive kay kanang be wise in choosing kanang words nga imo bitang buhian kay wala ta kabalo sa kanang matag usa kay every person kanang nam gyud kanya nga story behind. So kanang be sensitive kanang kay lahi tag level of insensitivity kanang para sa imo is kanang simple ra na siya nga words din kanang gibuhian nimo din wala ka kabalo nga katuday nga simple words is kanang nakaguba na nakasakit na dayto sa iyaha nga isa sa mga rason nganong dili na siya makighalubilo sa kanang kadaghanan kay mahadlok siya kanang nag-overthink na siya nga ay maura gyapon ni sa ako ang past experience nga kanang i-judge siya kanang wala kanang easy ra kay sa usa ka tawo ang mo judge mubuhi og istorya without knowing nga katudi ay mao dayto nga rason nga nung dili na siya kanang muutro pa og pakighalubilo sa uban. So kanang be wise, be specific kanang magbuhi ka or magpoint ka og kanang tao kanang kung mahimo i-generalize na lang ang words kanang para to avoid kana bitang conflict kanang kuan para dili mag-assume ang kanang usa ka tao bahalag maigo siya but wala ka nagpoint og name. So kanang be wise, be careful sa mga words nga atong pagabuhian. So it is important to use words nga dili unfair sa gender sa usa ka tao. So naay duha ka column, sexist, language ug neutral. So basahon ako ang sexist then ang neutral dayon. So sa sexist, chairman. Sa neutral, chairperson. Sa sexist, salesman. Sa pikas, salesperson. Congressman. Sa pikas, legislator. Spokesman, spokesperson. Foreman, supervisor. Stewardess, flight attendant. Waitress, server. Policeman, police officer. Fireman, firefighter. Man-made, manufactured. Businessman, manpower. Business executive worker. So, sumakita ninyo diri ang table. So, sa first column is kanang mo to siya ang first column is sexist language. So mao na ako na istorya. So diri sa 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 neutral diri is kanang pangkalahatan siya bitaw to at dili siya to kanang pangkalahatan siya ba to avoid kanang gender bias bitaw. So pangkalahatan siya ang sa neutral. While ang sa sexist kay kana bitaw mura lang siya nag-point og usa ka tawo based on my understanding ha. Nag-point lang siya og kanang his, her, ikaw, siya kana bitaw. While ang neutral is kana bitaw generalize siya. Kanang tunga siya ba? O neutral na gani no kana bitaw. Kanang pag magbuhi siya words is kanang we, us, kanang maing-ana bitaw, to avoid gender bias kay wala ta kabalo. Like for example, mag-address ka o kanang sulat. So kung sa sexist pa to, kana bitaw, there sir, bisag wala siya kabalo nga kanang babae ba ni or lalaki, wala lang, mo lang to iyaha, char. Bitaw, wala lang, mo lang to iyaha. So, sa neutral kanang wala man siya kabalo kung babae ba ni or lalaki. So, it's either mag-use siya o kanang their sir/madam kay kanang wala ta kabalo basin pa lang og madam ang mahatagan or sir. So, kanang to avoid bitaw sa conflict nga mahitabo. So, usa ka tawo kabalo siya sa sex sa usa ka tawo. Ang sex lang siguro iyang gibasihan kung lalaki ba ni siya or babae, like for example chairman or chairwoman. While ang neutral is general words iyang gamit to avoid gender bias. So proceed ta sa ways to avoid gender bias language. So makita niyo dira at chung sa among PPT. So ang first is substitute gender bias pronouns with articles or determiner. So mao to ang sexist mo na siya. Every employee is entitled to his 13-month pay. So gibasa ra nako na no. So nag-point up sa just like sa akong gibuhian, ang sexist is nag-base lang siya sa sex sa kanang maybe lang ha sa akong nag-base lang siya sa gender or sa lagi sa gender. So his iyahang point while non-sexist is kanang nag-use siya general word to avoid kanang offend, to avoid conflict sa iyahang employees. So motto so the second is use plural pronoun instead of singular pronoun. So sexist each employee must submit his proposal next week. So mo lagi na ang sexist is kanang singular. Kasagaran ginagamit niya is singular pronouns kanang bitaw nagkuan na siya, isa lang ang iyahang gipoint kanang bitaw kanang nag-determine siya og kuan, nag-determine siya sa ka tao, isa lang or his or her, or it depends kung saan gamiton. While a non-sexist is all employee must submit their proposal next week. So mo na no ang sexist is kanang kuan siya, gayus siya og isa lang, kanang nagpoint lang siya og his ba na iyang gamiton or her, basta kanang nag-base lang siya sa sex bitaw. While ang non-sexist is kanang general words iya to avoid gender bias. So basta mo to kana bitang is kanang ang sexist basig naglibog mo ang sexist wala murag nagpoint para sa ako nag-base lang siya sa sex sa usa ka sa sex sa usa ka tao or babae ba niya siya or lalaki, while ang gender is ang neutral is gagamit siya og kanang general world kay wala ta kabalo na ay gay, na lesbian, bisexual, babae, lalaki. So instead of using kanang sex nga kanang sexist language, nag-use ya og kanang neutral nga kanang for all bitaw, so to generalize sa kanang statement. So motto kanang it is important to know gid no kung unsay kanang point sa usa ka statement kay wala ta kabalo sa gamay nga words nga atong gibuhian is naka-offend na ta kay lahi-lahi tag level of sensitivity. So mo to dili na nako tas on. So ways sa nasa babaw actually kanang guidelines na mo sa gibutang sa among leader. So nasa babaw kanang guidelines on kanang to avoid kanang gender bias language. So be specific kanang sa imuhang statement nya. Kung maghimo kag comparison, kinahanglan niya kanang tarungon nimo siya or kanang choose a words wisely bitaw. Kung maghimo kag comparison nga kanang to avoid gender bias, kanang dapat proper ang imuhang kanang plaster ang imuhang pagkabuhi sa statement nga nimo nga pang general bitaw siya nga wala siya matumban or ma-offend na sa katao or masakitan nga feelings. So be specific, be wise in choosing a words nga imong buhian, o kanang be sensitive, o kanang sa tawag ani sa kanang mag-advance ka ba naon gyud nimo sa makadaghan nga ang imong gibuhian nga kanang words is kanang okay ra sa tanan, dili kay kanang nakay-gipoint ka masakitan na noon kay lahi-lahi level of sensitivity. So kanang be good kanang moto. So dili na nako balik-balikon. Sexist is kanang nag-base lang siguro siya sa sex, while ang neutral is for all siya to avoid gender bias bitaw. So it is important to know gyud no sa kalahian sa it is to know the importance of how to use gender bias language kay dahil lahi tag kanang feelings level sa sensitivity. So moara to.
To take note to use Miss if you have no idea if the female addressee is single or married. Use Mrs. or Mistress if you are sure that the female addressee is married. So thank you so much for listening, and we hope nga namoy nasabtan sa amo ang discussion. So once again, I am Miss Karen Odensing, and I am with Miss Ashnea Mildred Dumo, Mr. Reggie Flores, and Miss Hazel May Diktahan. Gibutang sa namo diri ang link nga amo ang gikuhaan sa amo ang discussion. So if you have any questions or clarifications, you can send us through Gmail or through Messenger. Thank you so much once again, and good day everyone.